Hey guys, welcome to another video here on the AviationPro channel. In this video I'm going to give you 10 tips on how to control your nerves and stress less on VATSIM. Now, as you know, VATSIM flights can be quite stressful, especially when there's a lot of traffic in ATC, and also I mean still today I'm stressing out a little bit inside myself. But in this video I really like to give you some straightforward tips in order to reduce those stress levels when you're flying into a very busy airspace. Now, of course, my old tips that you've heard regularly before still count, like make sure you fly a flight from airports that you know, and just pick a route and fly that offline multiple times and make sure you know how to fly your airplane. But these are some little bit of different tips that should help you out as well. The first tip is to pick easy and not complex airports. What are easy airports? Well, airports with one runway and maybe just one terminal building. You don't have to fly into London Heathrow or Amsterdam Schiphol Airport or Chicago O'Hare. Those are super large airports which are very complex with a lot of taxiways, which is going to make your experience a lot worse. And take into account that their airspace structure and their structure of sits and stars is also very complex, especially when there's a lot of traffic. And simply, these large airports also draw a lot of traffic because they are so big. So make sure you fly to the smaller airports that you know. So for example, if you're flying to the Netherlands, instead of flying to Amsterdam, you could try to decide, if Amsterdam radar is online, to fly to Rotterdam, a simple airport with one runway, a few parking spots, and when Amsterdam radar is online, they will also provide ATC for Rotterdam. Or if you really want to fly into London but want to pick a slightly less complicated airport, go for Gatwick or maybe London Stansted or London Luton. Just smaller airports in the same area could already do the trick. The second tip that I would like to give you is to always stay ahead of your airplane. And this is quite a complex tip. What do I exactly mean by staying ahead of the airplane? Well, basically this ties in with my old tip of knowing your aircraft, and that is to always make sure that you know what the aircraft is doing in advance. If at some point during the flight you lose track of what the aircraft is doing or what it will do next, that's really the point where you have to gather your thoughts, block everything outside that is distracting you, and really focus on, okay, what's the airplane doing? Where am I? What are my next steps? So whenever you're in a moment where you don't feel that you're fully managing the airplane anymore, just take a moment and gather your thoughts and try to get and stay ahead of the airplane again. And if you cannot achieve that, you can always keep the third tip in mind, and that's you can always disconnect. Just like you can always go around, you can always disconnect from the VATSIM network. And trust me, I've done that multiple times, especially when I was a young VATSIM pilot. I simply at some point did not know what to do anymore. I simply did not know what the aircraft was doing or what ATC was telling me to do. So I had plenty of moments where I simply disconnected and aborted the flight and then tried again the next day. And by trying again the next day, you might feel a little bit more comfortable. You maybe have learned a little bit, or you maybe have flown the flight offline a couple of times first. And in that way, keeping that in the back of your mind can make your flight already a little bit less stressful. The fourth tip that I like to give you is that you have to set priorities. So for example, forget about the landing lights. Don't worry about the small little things aboard the aircraft that can distract you. Really focus on the flying first. Of course, maybe when you do your first flights, you want to do everything right. You want to make sure that you turn off the landing lights at the right time, or maybe turn off the anti-ice at the right time. But it's a simulator. You don't have to do this. What's important first when you're flying on VATSIM is really that you know how to fly the airplane and navigate through the virtual skies. When you're on a busy departure, for example, forget about all those other things. Don't let those things distract you. Really try to prioritize on communicating with ATC and flying your aircraft properly. The fifth tip that I like to give you is to go outside and maybe get some exercise before you do your flight. I can imagine when you're doing your flight, you're kind of planning it and you're kind of looking forward all day to flying that flight, but it's important to kind of clear your mind as well. Because for example, if you decide in the morning that you're going to fly tonight, you're thinking about it all the day, and you might get disappointed if things go wrong then. So make sure you kind of clear your mind by doing something else and going outside. It really helps making that flight a little bit more enjoyable. And I think it really helps to stress less, control your nerves, and being able to deal with difficult situations that may happen during the flight. And tip number 6 is to make sure that you know your way around your home cockpit. And what I mean by this is that regardless of the setup that you use and the amount of hardware that you have, that you kind of design the home cockpit in such a way so you can easily control the aircraft and can find your way around in the virtual cockpit. For example, the way I did this in my early days, I of course had a joystick, but I picked an old keyboard in order to set a lot of keyboard keys in the virtual cockpit. So I had to make as little use of the mouse in the virtual cockpit as possible. And this is really helpful when you're flying around on the VATSIM network, because you don't want to look around all the time, again, getting distracted by, for example, the landing lights by looking up in the virtual cockpit. If you have charts, maybe you can try to find a second monitor in order to display those charts there, so you don't have to alt tab to another program. You know, there are these little simple things that you can do to make your flight more comfortable by simply designing your home cockpit in such a way so that you can just focus on the flying without having to be distracted alt tabbing or going to other programs or looking at different parts of the cockpit to find a switch that you very simply could set a keyboard key to. So it's these little things that really help in this regard. The 7th tip that I'd like to give you is that you have to try to laugh. Now, laughing really helps to just kind of get rid of those nervous feelings and reduce your stress levels. Now, maybe you hear some interesting conversation in the cockpit, or maybe you can laugh about a situation that has happened before. Something might have gone wrong a little bit, but afterwards you may kind of laugh a little bit about it and joke a little bit about it. In that way you can kind of not take it too seriously. Of course you want to correct any mistake that you have made in your next flight, but this has passed. Try to kind of laugh to kind of get rid of that negative emotion associated with any mistake that you might have made. And again, in general, laughing a little bit, whether it's about people that you hear on a radio frequency that sounds a little bit funny or whatever, anything that you can do will definitely help reduce those stress levels. And in order to help that trying to laugh a little bit more, there's tip number 8. And that is to fly together with other pilots. Now, if you're very lucky, you might have a friend in your neighborhood that also likes the flight sim hobby, so you can fly together, and in that way you can, have a better experience and kind of, share the workload this way, or maybe you can ask questions to each other in order to, again, reduce those stress levels. And if you're nervous about something, you can simply ask and kind of share the experience together that way. But keep in mind that the divisions of VATSIM are also very active. So within the different VACs, there are usually quite a lot of members who get together on TeamSpeak and fly, flights together, or maybe some sort of event associated with some ATC. So there's, a lot of pilots in one chat room. So make sure you check out your local VAC, get to know the members, and maybe fly together every once in a while, or simply join the TeamSpeak channel during one of your own flights, so that when you get nervous about something, you could simply ask another pilot, say, hey, I'm not sure what star to fly, what star did you pick? There are these little simple things that can really help to control your nerves by, again, just sharing the experience with others. And again, of course, the occasional joke that you may hear in such TeamSpeak channels definitely helps as well. And tip number 9, and that is to not be fooled by angry ATC. Now, let's be honest, I'll be honest with you, yes, some air traffic controllers on VATSIM can get a little bit angry, or, just seem a little bit frustrated with you when you make mistakes. And I had it when I was a young pilot as well. I can still remember very well. I was on a departure from runway 24 at Amsterdam, and I was instructed to direct to Pampus VOR. And I basically did not know what to do. I had no idea how to fly direct to a VOR. And that's why it's very important to watch tutorial videos, guys. But anyway, what I said is just, KLM 123, stand by. And then the controller said, no standby, you have to fly direct to Pampus. And I was kind of freaking out. So, I'll just make some sort of turn in that direction, and maybe I'll find my way. But as you can imagine, you can kind of feel bad about this when you are faced with such a controller. Nothing bad per se about this controller. I mean, they do this in the free time as well, and I can understand that they really want to see trained pilots as much as possible. And that's why I have this channel, to kind of teach pilots, how to fly on the VATSIM network in the first place. But again, don't be fooled by this angry ATC. Of course, you might encounter them, but just try to stay calm. If you are able to remain calm, or even make the decision to disconnect, that's fine. As long as during the next flight, that you have learned, and that you will apply your knowledge correctly this time. And again, by doing this, you will only get better, and you can laugh about it as you tell that story later, like I do right now. I can kind of laugh about that situation, but it only made me a better VATSIM pilot. And the last tip number 10, and that is to see the bigger picture. Now, you might feel a little bit alone when you're flying on the VATSIM network. It feels like ATC is really instructing you and is really watching you all the time. But no, you're part of a very big picture. No, you're part of a maze of traffic that's coming into an airport, and a maze of air traffic control. And you kind of have to see that bigger picture and understand that you're not alone. In the end,
all pilots and all air traffic controllers are working together in order to get you down safely. Of course, that's something that happens in the real world, but the same counts on VATSIM. So if you try to understand this bigger picture and kind of, see that from an, top-down perspective, you kind of get a more, I think, more relaxed feeling, and helps kind of reduce those nervous feelings when you're flying on VATSIM. Of course, you might get nervous about the idea that, one mistake screws up everyone, but that's not what it's about. In the end, you're all there to help each other out, and even disconnecting can help in such case. But again, then you will have learned from the situation and you can apply new knowledge next time. And if you start to become a little bit more experienced on VATSIM, you will notice that you kind of feel a little bit more responsible, especially towards new pilots. And then it becomes more clear what this bigger picture is, and that you're part of this maze of traffic, and that you can do your bit in order to make the traffic situation run smoothly. So those were 10 tips. I hope these tips have helped you out. And again, just maybe as a last bonus tip, just make sure that you have fun. Of course, things will go wrong. You might feel nervous at times, but in the end, you will learn each and every time, each and every flight. I mean, I still learn every flight new things that I can apply on next flights. And if things go wrong, I don't feel bad about it anymore. It just feels like an opportunity to learn a little bit more so I can apply that knowledge next time. So thanks for watching this video here on the Aviation Pro channel. Make sure to check out some of my other videos and some tutorial videos that might help you out in gaining more confidence with flying on VATSIM. And if you'd like to support the channel in my endeavor, make sure you head over to patron.com/aviationpro, and that would be very much appreciated. I'd like to thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.